be eaten by scavengers. There's no way it could take thousands of years for the layers to finally bury that thing, right? So they go back to what's called the Green River Formation. Oh, no, no, no. Some lakes and rivers or props bottom of the ocean were like the Green River Formation that we know about today. And we got fossil deposits in the bottom of these. And that proves the Bible is wrong. Because we got hundreds of thousands of these layers in the bottom, and we got fossils in them. And guess what? The bottom of the Green River Formation, the water has practically no oxygen. Normally you have a little bit of oxygen dissolved in the water. No oxygen, and it's alkaline instead of acidic. Therefore, these fish could have laid at the bottom of that for thousands of years while the sediments finally buried them. No problem. Alkaline and no oxygen. That's what they said. That's what they taught. Guess what happened? Well, Chicago, Natural History Museum, they turned around and tested their own theory. They took some freshly dead fish, put them in a wire cage, put them in the bottom of the Green River Formation, and would pull them up every once in a while just to see how well they're doing. You know, they should last for a long time at the bottom. So 6.5 days later, how are they doing? Oops, they're falling apart. The skin's rotting. The bones are falling apart in 6.5 days. How are they going to last for thousands of years, folks? Impossible. They're violating the basic known laws of all of chemistry. When you turn around and wash your clothes, or your mother's wash your clothes, okay? What does she use? She used a soap powder, right? That takes the water and turns it alkaline. They're lying, folks. Alkaline makes things break down even faster. But if you don't know that, you won't be caught in a lie. I didn't know that. Okay? Could these fossils have formed fast or slow? Did it take them millions of years to swallow his lunch? No, folks. It must have occurred quickly. We have certain fossils out there that prove beyond a shadow of a doubt they had to form quickly. Or what about this one? It's been known since 1952. It hasn't finished digesting its lunch yet? Does it take millions of years to digest? No, folks. What about 1953? This bat in a cave died. And so they're sitting there dead, and I guess some water was dripping down its head, dripping down its head. And he just sort of sat there for millions of years while he became fossilized, right? Now, he'd have rotted, right? Well, how come he looks like this today? He's completely encased in solid stone, flowstone. He didn't even have time to rot before he became fossilized, or the flowstone formed. There's all kinds of evidences of rapid burials. What about this? This is Tyrannosaurus rex. Kind of interesting. March 2005. The people found this big old Tyrannosaurus rex leg bone. They found the rest of the Tyrannosaurus rex. Leg bone was kind of heavy. So they brought in a helicopter. They couldn't fit on the helicopter. So they did something they didn't want to have to do. They had to break it in half. When they broke it in half, they found that the inside section hadn't fossilized yet. And there's no way that it could last for 65 million years. Or what about this flour sack? It only took it 3 weeks for the stitching of the flour sack and some of the flour to turn into hard mineralized rocks. 3 weeks. What about this clock? How long's man been making clocks? It's encased in solid stone. No, folks. What about this hammer? This hammer was found in fossilized rock. There's a better picture of it. We'll get a little bit closer. Let's go even closer. That rock is supposed to be 400 million years old. Does any evolutionist believe that there was human beings back there 400 million years ago making hammers? No, folks. Their theory is just a Hollywood story. It has nothing to do with science. What about rock layers? We say the geological layers had to be laid down quickly. They say slowly. Now, you've all heard of index fossils. Raise your hand, ever heard of index fossils? Well, a few of you had, okay. They generally put the index fossils in certain geological layers that they call the geologic column. And they turn around and go by the geologic column as if it was their own Bible. I mean, they have faith, but it's a blind faith, okay? How many places in the world can you find the geologic column? Only one place in the entire world. You'd think something as the foundation, their Bible for their evolutionary theory, would have some sort of evidence in more places than one place in the world, wouldn't you? It's only in the textbooks, folks. They find a piece here and a piece there and a bunch of pieces here. Well, there's a big gaps missing and a piece here. Wait a second. Where's the geologic column? Here's one textbook that even admits it. It says, if there were such a column of sediments, and then they turn around and say later, unfortunately for who? Unfortunately, no such column exists. Let's go to this thing we call index fossils. How do you end up with reptiles? Evolution says they started as fish, and then they turned into reptiles, slowly transformed into reptiles. And so what they come up with is something called a coelacanth. A coelacanth is a trilobe fin fish. Basically, it has a bunch of little fins on it. Let me take a look and show you a picture there. See that one? That's the pictures they draw. And they say it lived in shallow water because it turned around and eventually grew legs out where those fins are and started crawling up on land. This is what they put in the museum over in Atlanta. Okay? Coelacanth, from fins to 4 legs. That's what they found in the fossil record. And they used to be, they only found it in rocks that they date at somewhere around 300, 400 million years old. Then later, they eventually found out some rocks that date to about 70, 75 million years old. But they say the coelacanth was where reptiles came from. I got a question for you. Does this look 325 million years old to you? No. It's a deep water fish. This is why they hadn't been finding it. It lives very, very deep over the Indian Ocean. In fact, very few fishermen, they started pulling them up. Now they're very famous. So now they don't say the coelacanth is an index fossil anymore. They found out their theory was wrong, as usual, and they'll find some other story to stick in there for you next. It's just Hollywood. It's not science. True story. A creationist and a few people were up at this museum. They're going through this museum, and the museum tour guide had a master's degree in geology. So they're in Rapid City, South Dakota. They're going around the museum, and guess what? They walked over this area, and the museum tour guide turned around and pointed at those rock layers right there. And he says, we know that those rock layers right there are 70 million years old. 12-year-old girl who's with the creationist raised her hand. Sir, how do you know that rock layer is 70 million years old? Tour guide says, oh, good question, little girl. We know that rock layer is 70 million years old because the fossils we find above it, below it, or in it. We can date the fossils, and therefore we can date the rock layers. She raises her hand and says, thank you. As they're walking around the museum, they walk over this other area. You'll notice it's right back over here is where they were, right? He points to this fossil right here and says, we know this fossil right here is 100 million years old. Same little 12-year-old girl. Sir, how do you know that fossil is 100 million years old? Good question, little girl. We know that fossil is 100 million years old because of the rock layers we find it in. We can date the rock layers, therefore we can date the fossil. She raises her hand back and says, sir, when we're standing over here, you dated the rock layers by using the fossils. When we're standing over here, you date the fossils by using the rock layers. Isn't that circular reasoning? This master's degree in geology stood there stunned. And for quite a few seconds, he had nothing to say till he finally said, you know, I never thought of that before. You mean you can have a master's degree in geology and never see some of the assumptions you're making on the things that you're teaching people? He then drove a couple hours one way to see a creationist speak that night. He said, you mean everything I know about geology is wrong? After he saw all these evidences. And the creationist said, no, there's a lot of good things in geology. Just this idea of millions and billions of years of geological column index fossils, that's a bunch of baloney. You see, when they date these rock layers, they come up with all kinds of uranium, potassium, argon, uranium to lead, rubidium, strontium, isochron methods, and others. Okay? What they didn't bother to tell you, let's take the Grand Canyon. They can't date these rocks. What they generally date is when did this lava harden? Or when did this lava down here harden? That's what their dating methods are trying to do. When did these turn hard? When they were, in other words, they cooled down. We'll take a look at the dates. They turn around by their dating method, their favorite ones. They date this lava up here as 1.34 billion years old. They date this with 1.07 billion years old. That means the layer at the top is 270 million years old than the layer at the bottom. That's impossible. Yeah, they don't show you those dates, do they? What about this in Australia? There was a lava flow that they were dating, and in the middle of that hard lava was a fossilized tree, a piece of a tree. And they knew it had to be put there with the lava itself because it was charred. You mean it had been charred when this lava used to be hot? Oh, yeah. So they sent off to the dating laboratories, and they got a date for the lava at 45 million years old is when that lava cooled down. But then when they sent off to the dating laboratories a piece of the wood, they only got a date of 45,000 years old. What's the difference between those two numbers? It's only 100,000% error. Something's wrong with their dating methods, folks. Even this evolutionist who's an anti-creation, he can't stand creation. Even he, look what he says. It's obvious that the radiometric technique may not be the absolute dating method that they're claimed to be. There's no absolutely reliable long-term radiological clock. You ever been to Niagara Falls? Anybody been up that far? Oh, a couple people went up there. Now there's Niagara Falls. It's actually eroding backwards. Right here is where Niagara Falls used to be back in 1764. In 1819. Now it's not eroding so fast because we put reinforced concrete to try to keep it from eroding back too fast. And we actually take the water and turn it another direction, a bunch of other things. Eroding too fast. It's eroding about 4.7 feet per year. Well, if it's eroding 4.7 feet per year, how old is that gorge? Puts a maximum age on the gorge about 9,900 years. And if you really look at the layers, it puts a maximum age back about 4,000 to 6,000, but that's another reason, okay? So again, Niagara Falls could not possibly be millions of years of age. What do the evolutionists do? Well, some of them still claim, well, the last ice age was 100,000 years ago. They see this evidence, well, it must have been 10,000 years ago. Amazing how they keep changing their story to fit anything they want to come up with. Now, remember I said there's going to be two evidences I wanted you to remember from this lesson? This is one of them, and there'll be one after this, okay? Mississippi River. Look at all these river tributaries that are flowing the water down into the Gulf of Mexico. Now that means, have you ever been to the Mississippi River? Anybody been down there? Okay, a few of you. Would you want to take a cup of water, reach over there and drink some water out of the Mississippi River? Probably not, right? Even if you didn't have pollution, you wouldn't want to drink it because there's all kinds of river sediments and dirt in it, right? Okay. How much dirt is being carried by that water into the Gulf of Mexico every single year?